Warning, not threat, a warning to Dems, rhinos, traitors, and enemies, foreign and domestic. We have had enough. We tried reason, but you were hysterical. We tried talk, but you shouted us down. We elected a black president, but you race bait more now than ever. We tried voting, but you cheated. Our patience ebbs. Our options fade, but so do yours. Poisoned soldiers won't protect you. Betrayed police can't defend you. Antifa fights covertly because they know what would happen if they didn't. China won't aid you. We aren't your masked morons and stupid sheep. Let the elections happen. Our red righteous rage rises. And once it's unleashed, it's too late. I'm a retired SOCOM soldier, former DIA intelligence collector, and ex-DEA special agent, targeted by the deep state turned whistleblower. Now your intelligence officer, repurposed as chaplain, leader, teacher, and truth teller. New mission, restore and rescue our fallen republic. Objective, defeat the deep state. Means, expose fake news. Tools, truth, discernment, and free will. Attention, deep state Dems, rhinos, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and assorted traitors and enemies, foreign and domestic. Your masks won't silence us. Your shutdowns won't stop us. Your riots don't scare us. You're not as disciplined as the fierce as the Imperial Japanese. You're not as brutal as ISIS. We beat them all. You're next. Welcome. I'm Jeff Prather, and this is the Prather Point. Welcome, everybody. Glad to be with you. Got a lot to go on, but before I dive into that, back up on Yankee Tango there, at least for a little bit of time. But please go to jeffreyprather.com and subscribe for my free updates, JEFFREYPRATHER.com. You can also comment on the podcast there. You can go to the shop there. You can get your satellite phones at pratherdeal.com. That's a great thing to have for emergencies. You can get your bivy sticks there as well. That can give you some more cloistered communications as well. And probably most importantly, you need to get your Faraday bags as always so that you can bag up and not be pinged and tracked by this deep state. All of that is in my shop at jeffreyprather.com/shop, along with my training videos, the Jab Rescue Kit, my books, Boys Are Born, Men Are Trained, and I will be doing the service this Sunday at christchaplaincy.com. That's the chaplaincy I founded. So you're welcome to join us on that. There's 2 services, and I'll be running the main service at 10 a.m. Central Time. And I'll be speaking at Branson on Saturday at the Freedom and Health at Clay Clark's. I was at the first one. I was at San Antonio last year. Haven't been able to make any other ones, but I will be speaking at the last one of 2022. And that'll be an honor and a privilege to be there with my fellow Liberty luminaries as well. If you want a deeper dive, you can go to patreon.com/JeffreyPrather. And I have content at the $5, $15, and $25 level. $25 level is video, training videos. If you're interested in my horsemanship, martial arts, firearms, or faith lessons, or inner technology, as I like to call that. At the 15, there's transcripts. At the 5, curated news stories. You can also join jeffreyprather.locals.com free, or at the $9 level for a little mix of all of those. I'm still free Tuesdays and Thursdays. My podcasts are live. And then I have my Friday morning live Brighteon show, The Prather Point, at 10 a.m. And now I have 2 other shows on American Media Periscope. And they go at, they're recorded, but they're at Monday and Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern time. So plenty of stuff going on there because I'm not teaching that much anymore. But breaking story out of Palm Beach, Mar-a-Lago. Palm Beach police say that they responded to a trespassing call, But my sources say it's more of an assassination attempt at Mar-a-Lago. There were lots of police there and Secret Service sweeping the grounds. This looks like yet another assassination attempt. I can tell you from experience, I have worked extensively with the Secret Service because they're 1811 special agents as well. Used to shoot with some of them at Quantico. That this looks like yet another assassination attempt because the left is getting very nervous about the elections, which is a good sign. The enemy is panicking. But of course, you won't see this in the mainstream media. You'll just see Paul Pelosi's drunken homosexual encounter with a homeless illegal immigrant that is being played off like a J6 event. Speaking of J6 events, my friend and fellow Special Forces retired veteran Jeremy Brown is holding a gun rifle. I'll get that up on my, because he's coming up, his trial's coming up. They're asking him to plead out to one thing so they can drop the other stuff, and he's not going to do it. And that's great. He's going to stand strong. But remember, Jeremy is the guy who called out the FBI before January 6th because they came to his house to recruit him like they did Epps. Because in Special Forces, we actually recruit sources. So he knew what was going on and recorded it. He outed him, but he did go to the Capitol, kitted up, no weapons, and masked, and they got him for trespassing there. So prayers out to him and all the January 6th patriots as well. Lots happening. So the title of this cast is Countering Election Espionage, Election Espionage, continental wide, and that is the truth from Canada to South America and from coast to coast and border to border. Patriots and private citizens, because it's not just Team America, it's also Team Global Freedom, are fighting back against the pedos, parents and patriots fighting against the pedos. And the resistance is fighting against the Great Reset, the humanist against the transhumanist. And one of the most important stories that I've been emphasizing all week, and I want to emphasize it again, is that China iPhone workers have revolted and scaled the fences that they were locked down on. And you probably haven't heard much about this, but this combines the primary enemy nation state, China, with the primary non-nation state enemy, the iPhone, which is part of big tech to big pharma. Then it makes us like our phones, done lots of shows on the graphene oxide and hydroxide and mRNA. But this is a stunning announcement from last Sunday inside China, showing that there is rot from within. So the real estate's already collapsing. But remember, the whole George Floyd thing started with a counterfeit $20 bill from China out of a $250,000 pallet. That's economic warfare. Last time I checked, beat cops don't know anything about Secret Service counterfeit bills. But these workers at this Foxconn plant in the central city of Zhengzhou have been seen climbing over fences. They've been recorded being shot. And this is Apple's largest assembly site ever. And they are escaping the zero COVID lockdown at Foxconn in Zhengzhou. And they're sneaking home. This is very, very significant. And also truckers are picking them up. So remember the truckers strike in Canada, not the American one that was more just kind of publicity, but the truckers in Canada, a real strike, was significant. And again, that's significant because the fragile international supply chain, which is under siege warfare and sabotage warfare right now, because containers come on container ships, they get offloaded onto rails, and then off the rails, the trains, which are about to strike again, they're loaded onto 18-wheelers to truckers, and that's worldwide. So the truckers are supporting these Chinese workers breaking out. Now, Chinese, like Germans, are very controlled folks. They tend to riot along the sidewalk. So it's very, very significant that this working blue-collar class, China has been fighting and wishing for a middle class for a long time. That's what Biden is trying to destroy, the Biden regime, rather. That's what is the great engine of America, so that big box, big tech, big pharma can rule the world, and we can all be peasants in there. But the Chinese blue collar class are frustrated because after working for all these decades at American stuff and world stuff, they're not getting anything. And now they've been locked down, they've been starved, they've been shot, and now they are leaving. So this shows the rot of the tyrannical system from inside. And this is over 200,000 folks, almost 250,000 folks. So this is very, very significant, very, very good news. And Foxconn is Apple's biggest iPhone maker, producing 70% of the iPhone shipments globally, which in turn makes up 45% of Taiwanese firm's revenue, analyst at the Taipei-based Fubon Research Center said. And so they haven't been feeding them, they've shot them, and they have revolted anyway. So this, combined with the bank runs 300 miles from Beijing, is a very significant world event. This is an inflection point. And the Chinese press, such as it is saying, hey, they failed to prevent the epidemic. Of course, we all know that it's a pandemic, that it's not real, that it's just a way to control people. But the point is that they are losing control, and they are losing control worldwide. And they're calling this in China the Great Escape, after the World War II Allied Air Force escaped from the German prison camp, where eventually they assassinated a lot of the escapees. And they did that because the Germans had to devote a lot of time to going after them. Too Cool for School, Steve McQueen was in that. James Garner, great movie, true story. But this, again, takes China's nation state enemy status off of us. And so we are ally. This is an ally situation with the Chinese people, just like we're allied, as I say, with the Ukrainian people, while we're against the Azov Ukrainian Nazis. Up in Alberta, the new premier there has rejected, she was World Economic Forum. She's saying she rejects that now. And so that is, now she's a politician. So all politicians, like fish, after a couple of days start to stink. But this is very significant in that new Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is breaking with previous established ties with the World Economic Forum. And she says, I find it distasteful when billionaires brag about how much control they have over political leaders. So she's the United Conservative Party premier, said she is in lockstep with the federal conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, who has stated that he will have nothing to do with the World Economic Forum. And now this is very significant too, because Canada has become very authoritarian. I've had brave Pastor Arthur Pawlowski on the show, who prayed with the Canadian truckers. So again, this is another very important inflection point. This is the beginning of the Great Resistance. Remember, fourth generation resistance movements last decades, sometimes centuries. It takes that long. And the same thing in Brazil. And I've worked Brazil way back in the day. Outgoing conservative president Jair Bolsonaro asked participants to unblock the roads. Because they have unblocked the roads, they're asking for the military to do an audit. The last thing I heard, they are going to do an audit of the stolen elections, because they've elected literally a convicted thief, a convicted criminal has stolen that election as well. Of course, Venezuela has turned leftist. I've said for a long time, America will be like Venezuela. I have worked Caracas, so I am very well aware of what I am talking about. But they're saying we want a federal investigation in Brazil. Brazil borders Bolivia. That's the last place I was ambushed. And tellingly, there are leftists hitting crowds of people who are protesting with their cars. Now, think about that for a second, because that's exactly what happened in Waukesha with the Black Lives Matter guy who shaved his dreadlocks and was just convicted on all counts. So clearly, we are gaining ground and we are winning, even though the left, the worldwide left, is continuing to organize and use the same improvised weaponry tactics. Remember, In fifth generation warfare, regular weaponry is not allowed. It's improvised weaponry. And there were also fights with flags on the border with Venezuela. I did a whole series on my Patreon about how you can use improvised weaponry to fight with the flag if you so choose, although you should never fight on their battlefield. This is an announcement. George Webb, as my friend has talked about this, that he was on the other day talking about how the U.S. is admitting that they have troops in Ukraine, 101. And I said, well, they have never left. He thought the 101 was still airborne. It's not, it's air mobile. But we never left. Special operations troops, covert troops, and CIA Special Activities Division have been there since the beginning. And that is very crucial in that there was just a UN security vote that voted against, and China voted with Russia to investigate the US biolabs in Ukraine, because Ukraine is a biolab for the United States, and the United States is a biolab for the global cabal. But of course, after infiltrating us through espionage to then sabotage our elections through the 1,000 Talents open spy recruiting program. Remember, Lieber had a female People's Liberation Army second lieutenant military intelligence woman running him, just like Ghislaine Maxwell was running Epstein. That China has voted with Russia against us. So really showing that they are attacking us in unrestricted warfare every way except directly. And meanwhile, the United Kingdom and France voted against that as well. But it's quite obvious that wherever these biolabs pop up, something happens there. And finally, the Grand Old Party, and I emphasize old, and they never say this on TV because they don't want to admit it, but the GOP, the Grand Old Party, is actually sending out some election observers. And Republicans in the United States House of Representatives are using their oversight authority to send dozens of observers. So that means probably 12. This is from Republican Congressman Rodney Davis, Republican Illinois, ranking Republican on the House Administration Committee. And he's saying, we're sending out observers tasked with investigating the manner in which federal agencies are implementing measures to expand voter registration. And as in past elections, the House will use this legal authority to credential and deploy trained congressional staffers to serve as official House election observers in close or particularly cumbersome congressional elections. So that doesn't really mean anything. I can tell you, I appealed as a whistleblower to the Office of Special Counsel. The investigators they have are amateurs, weak, and very few. But it does mean that the patriots standing up, all the different groups that are doing that, Team America, Clean Elections, all over, have actually roused the Grand Old Party to waking up to at least look like they are doing something for fair elections. But remember, the rhinos love to lose, so they don't have to do anything, but they can complain and act like they are. And we should reserve our most righteous rage for them, because the Dems are out. The Dems are saying, hey, we want to kill babies, make cosmetics out of their little corpses, groom, jab, addict, pimp, push, and castrate the born. But the rhinos act like they are constitutional and conservative. So just like I talk about Christ mongers, I'll also talk about Constitution mongers as well. And in Arizona, one of the groups Team America's worked with, Michael Schaefer, 2020 is nullified, has broken through the lines in Cochise to do a hand count against the machine count. And of course, they are freaking out about that. And you don't see this in any stories. I was looking for it because the stories are all biased, talking about vigilante Dropbox watchers and everything else. Although none of the Dropbox watchers, even the armed ones and kitted up ones, have done nothing wrong. But they're bringing out Mark Elias to Cochise County. That's how we're there. Mark Elias is Clinton's big time attorney. And Mark Elias is running the U.S. Postal Service's election steal program. So they're sending him out to Cochise County tomorrow, and I think that's going against Attorney Michael Blem, Patriot attorney. So they are very, very worried. But across the country, from border to border, as I just said, Canada to the Arizona border, coast to coast, where we've been talking about KONNECH in LA, and in New York, Marley Hornick, and in Michigan and Ohio, all of these things are happening. But I wanted today focus on what's happening in Georgia. And I have a Patriot lady with me ready to come on. And this is Amber Connors. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for waiting. Sorry to take so long. And you are working on election integrity in Georgia. And you just had a very important event yesterday, correct?
Yes. A few people went to speak at the commissioners meeting, considering the memorandum of understanding that was passed that allows an outside entity, which is the Carter Center. But our biggest worry is that it's connected to the United Nations and the Chinese Communist Party. You know, for as long as I can remember, the Carter Center has always been brought in when two sides are divided and wanting to rip each other's hair out. So, you know, I would have no issue with the Carter Center looking over it. It's the issue of the Gates Foundation and other entities that would be able to get a fingerprint on the voter rolls and the people of Georgia and how we vote. And to me, it's absolutely unacceptable when there's entities bigger than American citizens and American institutions that can actually infiltrate, even if everyone there is trying to be on the up and up and both sides agree to it. You know, it worries me, especially when we're dealing with technology warfare. We're dealing with since 1999, we've actually had the CDC, our CDC servers in China. Just think about our medical information that they have hold to. Now, I'm not a warmonger, and I'm not someone who's like, you know, let's go after anybody who doesn't see it the American way. However, I don't like us being vulnerable, and I really worry about us being naive to our vulnerabilities, especially when people as big as the Gates Foundation have, you know, Davos on their mind, Klaus Schwab, and these other big players that can come in, infiltrate, and actually take over a city or a state, buy up its property, and look at its citizens as if they're commodities. So, you know, that's why I went to push back, and we're very frustrated at what we see going on. I've been fighting against voter fraud in Georgia way before the 2020 election. Even if it was someone I didn't vote for, if I heard that there was people who were not treated right at the polls, or there was questions, I wanted to get down to it, because the one person, one vote, right, is sacred to me. It is the most sacred thing in our country, is to be able to not be ruled by a king and to be able to have a vote and to say. And when it's threatened, I will stand up anytime for whoever has been threatened, even if it's not my person. And so that's why I'm in this fight.
Well said. And so this memorandum of understanding that you are mentioning, I've got this pulled up. I don't know whether you can see this, but then you were able to go before the board, and you basically brought up the fact that you've just talked about, that the Carter Foundation is involved in this, and then also Gates and Schwab and everything else. And what was their response to you and the other ladies and gentlemen that spoke there?
So it was brought to my attention by a group of people who have been very frustrated because they turned in election fraud, not only in 2020, but past elections as well. One lady in particular, she married a Chinese man many years ago, who, when he came to America, he had to hide his identity. He, you know, he was threatened, and they raised children together. And she's heard some of the horror stories that a lot of Americans seem to be naive to. I have Chinese friends, and they understand what it is I'm talking about as well, because they've experienced like a tyranny, an authoritarian regime that doesn't allow that autonomy, and is pushing for social credit score, in which I see a lot of Americans, especially those who just graduated out of college and been brainwashed, who think it'd be a great idea, but they have no idea what that entails. So these women had noticed that there was a memorandum of understanding that was passed in the dark of night. And when they grabbed it, they were able to make a print up of it. And as soon as it became obvious that people were going to push back, it was scrubbed off of Scribd. And so when I went to go and retrieve it, I wasn't able to grab it and pass it around the public. I had to wait until I got there, where these ladies had printed it out. And I was very frustrated. And so my main complaint was, why is it not accessible? Why is this being done behind the scenes? And why have we allowed for our CDC servers to be in China, as well as they're able to view our software, especially with the Connect thing that's coming up with Eugene Yu, and the many issues that, all through the Trump campaign, all I heard was Russia, Russia, Russia. All I heard was infiltration of our voting system. And all I heard was that, Trump cheated, and all of this stuff. And now it's turning around where, we were told that there was nothing there. And now they say they need an intercessor or an intermediary because they're worried about the fraud. So it's very one-sided. It's very biased. And I don't play it that way. I'm consistent about not wanting voter fraud, no matter who won or who lost. And I'm very frustrated with those on both sides who play this game. And so I'm trying to hold their feet to the fire. And so when I saw these ladies, they were going to be going up there, I got the news and I said, I'll come up there and join you. And I went, let them know how I felt, reached out to both sides to let them know why I'm frustrated. And then, really the main issue is they're breaking codes. They're breaking charters and Georgia law in order to do this. And for me, maybe I'm a goody two shoe, but I think the laws are important. I think once they're written into our legislation, if you don't like the law, don't go out and throw a fit and riot and burn things down. Go to legislation, lobby, and may the best man win. That's the way our system works. I'm a big constitutional republic person. My ancestors came here for that very purpose, and it's super important. And we're losing of what our country stands for, and we're losing the art of debate and the art of going to the legislature and really duking it out the proper and wise way in these situations. So I fully respected them pointing out the laws that are being broken in this. Although I do get why the Carter Center would come in to want to be an intercessor. I think that we don't need to be looked over as if we were a third world country. I take offense at that,
Well,
because we're America.
I found it very interesting in the MOU, which I've got up, is talking about, according to a public letter of concern from 4 Georgia congressmen in February 2021, the Carter Center has a long history of cooperating with the United Front Work Department of the Chinese Communist Party, which Mao Zedong considered the magic weapon to ensure the victory of communism over democracy. And the MOU is quoting the TCC website. And of course, this MOU just came out this month, just a couple of days ago. So this saying it's logical that the nonpartisan international election observers currently working in Fulton County will have plenty of time to gather an immense amount of personal social media, documentary, email correspondence, voice recording, AI, and personal shadowing experience from the Fulton County employees and staff to cause them to be immediately vulnerable to security risks. So that's just, as an old intelligence officer, that's just really espionage. And the reason they're doing it is there's a Chinese consulate there, but they are concerned that it is not working. So this is I think, the most important part of this MOU. And I think you're talking about the citizens of Fulton County. Mrs. Susan Oprasuth is the
Oprasuth, yes.
Mr. Matt Rowensock
Yes.
are the folks following this up. So that is really Go ahead.
Yes, I think that's really the crux of the situation. We have other countries and other entities that we can't control what they're able to disseminate, to use, to record, and to use at a later time, and which puts our country at risk. You know, I I'm very protective over my country, and I think we should all be. And I think we should always come to the table with our hand open and a nice shake. But I think being naive or only learning about the fascists in our history and not actually concentrating on the communists as well is a detriment to our society. And I feel like we have kids who run around and say everything is fascist, not knowing what it means, but they know very little about what is communist and what that means as well. And, I feel like we're in a pressure cooker where you're either labeled a fascist communist. Would much rather be like an American who loves and appreciates her constitutional republic. And so I will not be put in those corners, and I will always ask questions when I see other countries that have their hand dipped into our system where it doesn't belong. And just like that mother who knocks a hand away from the hot stove, yeah, I would be glad to walk straight up and knock the hand off of dipping into our system, our American system. I'm not okay with it. I never will be okay with it. And I would hope that we're dealing with this because of naivete and not because of treason.
Well, that's very well said, and you are exemplary of everything that represents the best of America. So thank you so much for coming on. And that's what I see all the time with Team America is ladies standing up, not the old veterans so much. Ladies leading the way, just like they did at the resurrection. It was the ladies out there because the guys were too afraid. Is there a organization or website that you want to direct people to support you from?
I haven't really built anything like that except for I run a Concerned Citizens United group here in Atlanta where neighbors and people all over the city can report crime and can go and do court watch to look to see about the revolving door and the release of violent offenders, but also look at those who are left in jail that should not have been in jail because we have an upside down system where some of our most violent are being let go with minimal to very little bail, and some that should not be put in jail spend 18 months to 2 years waiting for their court case. And so we really need to dig in there. And so there's a large group in the contingency where we talk with the media, we talk with our local elected officials, and we push back against judges that like to legislate from the bench because, their feelings put the criminal above the victim. And I think before anyone should worry about the criminal in any given time, we should be worrying about the victim first. And that's really what I associate myself with. But to go back to your point really quick, Jeff, Mr. Prather, I would say that yes, women are stepping up, but I would say that I'm guilty as well as some other women to debilitating our men by not allowing that testosterone, but also um, using our voice to scream over, to take away their protectiveness and their protective nature. There's a wise way to tell men not to go to war. And then there's a way that debilitates them, causes them to become weak, and then causes them to take a back seat and just tune into sports. And I would say a large contingency of women fell for that. Now, I don't know if it's something that Bernays or Sigmund Freud or the powers that be or the globalists had decided to do to many countries. Did work, and I would like to be one of the first ones to take responsibility for that and to say that we want our men back. We don't, we're not looking for Thor, and we do want the compassionate and those dads that want to play with their children and care about chaperoning and being there for them. But we also want those men to be in touch with their protective nature and to stand up for our country. They don't have to grab a weapon, they don't have to do anything but be there and stand up and speak back. And I'll be willing to support them from behind whenever necessary and to stand in front now that a lot of them have been debilitated, and step up when I need to. But I would like to be one of those who tell them, it's okay to stand back up. It's okay.
That's excellently said. I teach that all the time, especially in my initiation cycle. Boys and girls are born, men and women are trained. And years ago at Warrior School, I show movie clips in my longer seminars. This was a 5-day seminar. And we showed a clip from The Patriot where Heath Ledger runs into the church and says, "Hey, I need everybody." And the guys don't stand up. And his girlfriend stands up and says, "Well, you were just talking about being a patriot the other day at my table." And so talking about shaming men, not nagging them, because you can't nag us to take out the garbage, but you can shame us into dying for you. And in one class, this guy stood, he was a military class. He goes, "Yeah, I'm in that." And sure enough, he was. I was like, "Well, how come you're not doing the movies anymore?" And he said, "Got tired of pretending." So that was a really cool story. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Keep up the great work, and we will keep you in our prayers.
Thank you so much, Mr. Prather. Have a wonderful week.
You too. Okay, so that's a very moving and excellent, well-spoken lady, and knows what she is doing on all fronts. That's what I call human orientation. Is if you orient to God, then you know how to orient out, and that's the luminous cross down and out and the circle. And something else I got and want to talk about now is I've talked about years ago how the forensics came out of China for Dominion. They're inside CISA, the Cyber Infrastructure Security Agency. And Harry the Greek just had a story out on November 2nd saying how China and the UN have control of the Georgia's elections. And we just talked about that with a lady who is fighting against that, and how he predicts that Stacey Abrams will be certified as the governor of Georgia on December 15th because they will cheat through all of this. And that goes along with the what he calls a treaty. I talked about this the other day, but is in a memorandum of understanding, MOU. I'm very familiar with the MOUs, worked under many as well. But to switch topics there, to talk about, there is nothing new about all this data going to China. And while the True the Vote case rages in Houston, and Catherine Engelbrecht and Greg Phillips sit in jail for contempt, there's plenty of evidence that that is already a fact. And that's actually what the LADA, ECNEF, has said. And so we're talking about this from coast to coast and border to border, from Arizona to from the Arizona-Mexican border to the U.S.-Canadian border, from New York through Georgia, through Michigan, through Ohio, Arizona, California. Patriots like Amber Connor and other Team America members. She's not on Team America, but I'm saying Team America, Clean Elections, other groups are standing up and making a huge difference. And this is an example of that forensics that somebody from California, Chris Hunter, the IP Hunter, sent me. And I'm always trying to get him on, but it's difficult to do. But if you look at these forensics, and I've had these forensics up before, there's nothing really new about these forensics. This is a forensic chart. Just something when I was at the pit, and also I've talked about this before, about how you used to have to minimize when you were tracking phones. Long ago, there was a DEA phone tracking program, primarily against Colombian cartel leaders, to trace who was running cocaine. And that program ran out of money. The CIA picked it up, and now they've made it huge. The NSA's got it, and now, but the eyes are all turned inwards on us, not outwards, which is why whenever they purposefully fail, they call it yet another intelligence failure. It's not. It's engineered evil. But here you can see, if I enlarge this, it's pretty difficult. Let's see if I can get it up there so you can see this, is that KONNECH is the center of this. I don't think I could get it much larger than that to show you how this centers on KONNECH. And this is nothing new. This is what LA says. And this is what the contempt charge is that Greg Phillips won't reveal the last person in the hotel room. There's a lot of controversy about that. I talked about that the other day with George Webb, talked about that with other folks. But true the vote, Catherine Engelbert looks like she's just an innocent in there. But the intelligence, which could be evidence if it made it into court, of the servers going to China, just like the OPM hack, Office of Personnel Management, which because I spent my entire career in federal government, I was a victim of. That is how they then knew how to hack and attack everybody else. There's nothing new about this. And so if there are folks out there who are much more computer expert than I am, feel free to email me, jp@jeffreyprather.com. My peerage often emails me and says I'm doing a good job. But here you can see they're talking about the types of ports and organization, ISPs, and coming down here to KONNECH.com in number 1 column. And then if you go down to the number 10 column, you see Yulian, which is like Eugene, and .cn. .cn is the IP address for China. And so it's very, very clear that this stuff goes back to China. There's no doubt about it. There's no shortage of proof. But because the FBI, the DHS have all been sabotaged through espionage, and the best example is they've been recruited because they didn't evaluate their counterintelligence. Tony Schaefer, my peer at DIA, has spoken about this very well, because when you get a defector or when you get information, the first thing is it legitimate, or are they trying to infiltrate us? And the FBI, which was a bank robber organization, then became a white collar crime organization, then became a counter drug organization, then became a counter terror organization, then became a counterintelligence organization, chasing the money, never really understood intelligence and counterintelligence very well. And so the whole thing goes back to Comey and Mueller and CrowdStrike and Steele, MI6, who was working with Dashenko, Russian intelligence, and all of that, and not looking at all of the Biden administration connections back to China, where they seduced, addicted, and then extorted by filming Hunter. Got all that. We'll get that up soon here. But this is a very interesting page here where it starts talking about arms control and non-proliferation technologies, and Security Council official records in New York. And of course, KONNECH out of Michigan ties into all of these and ties into Australia. I've shown the film of the Australian parliamentarian talking about how the documents say that the Australian voter information goes back to Wuhan, China, at the U.S. embassies. Just talked about how that is. He also had a contract in Canada, throughout many, many states. In Michigan, they are getting rid of him, and he is now out on bail. But it is very significant that this is going on. And so this is good news that we are fighting back, and Patriot citizens are doing the job that our government should be doing and is not doing at all. And the war rages, and but it's a 5th generation war, low on kinetic violence, high on information influence operations. and really combining the jab and the boosters as the operating systems to make us the antenna and recipient of their information influence operations. So what is also very, very significant, though, is, and I want to emphasize certain stories, because I don't know how much people follow me. I doubt if everybody's like, well, I love Jeff so much, I'm going to watch him Monday through Friday. No, people have lives, don't expect you to, pick something. But generally speaking, almost all of my podcasts, there's very little duplicative in each. So, for example, with my speech in Branson coming up, I'm going to take up where I left off in San Antonio. But I want to reemphasize that Fauci, who says he is science, and when these guys say I am science, and whatever you say, that's just the new Pharisees, that's just the new magicians, that's just the new theocracy. Science being a theocracy, a faith, a religion into itself, but he is being deposed. And it's interesting because I talked about this earlier, and now it's on the Gateway Pundit. I showed the film of Greg and Catherine being taken into custody. Then it was on Gateway Pundit. And so, the fringe liberty luminary news is catching up with the outside the mainstream. I'm not really news, although sometimes I'm doing news. On Brighteon, I broke the news about Roe being reversed, and I've broken some news on American Media Periscope as well. But it's really important that all these cases across the country, lawfare, are making progress, because I liken this to The Longest Day or Saving Private Ryan. Longest Day and being the better movie, but Saving Private Ryan is still a pretty good movie, where they're trying to get off the beach and break through. And I've said that in many of my intros, is the problem, wake up, the problem isn't proof, it's prosecution. There's no shortage of proof. Although in the mix in OPSEC and True the Vote, it's looking like there may be a shortage of the technical surveillance data that was proffered. But I'm not interested in spending a lot of time on that. I'm interested in rescuing and restoring the Republic. I don't want to spend time running people down or criticizing. I never respond to any criticisms of me. I'm very well used to it. I can tell who the good guys are by who the bad guys are attacking. So, when people go after Trump because he's supported the jab, I move on. When they go after Flynn for his 7 folds of light prayer or whatever, I move on. But once I'm betrayed, I won't work with those people anymore. But I don't spend a lot of time talking about that. I just want you to know that I'm trying to be as truthful and honest as possible. And regardless, across the nation and across the world, patriots and citizens are resisting this tyrannical takeover and pushing back. And in Louisiana and Missouri, they have broken through. And so this is really, really significant. And this is a story on undercoverdc.com. I've published this on my Patreon and on my locals. And this is by Tracy Beans. And it's a very, very significant story. And the writer says, Americans worried about government conspiring with social media companies to censor their speech aren't conspiracy theorists. It's been proven. And it's been proven in a court of law now. And when the case was filed in the states of Louisiana and Missouri, they alleged that several key bureaucracies in the federal government had conspired with big tech companies to censor free speech on social media platforms, exactly what we're all saying. And when the case was filed, the judge granted a very rare expedited discovery. And they explained why he granted that. And Gateway Pundit just got this out. I already had it out all week But last Friday, we learned that Anthony Fauci, the State Department, CISA, with Cyber Infrastructure Security Agency, the CDC, the White House, and other government organizations have engaged in unconstitutional Orwellian behavior, and it has been proven, not alleged, proven. And some of that is that the head of CISA designated our thoughts as critical infrastructure within the United States government, our thoughts, the thought police, 1984. And the Census Bureau got involved with tracking down people posting what the Ministry of Truth considers mis, dis, or malinformation. So this is hugely significant that the judge has said, and the judge says, normally you don't get to depose executive branch folks because they're really busy. And one way to do legal sabotage, lawfare, would just be to depose them all the time. Now, that's what the left does all the time. That's what they did to me over a decade ago. At one time, I had 5 lawyers. I spent like $75K defending myself, and I was never even charged, and I've never been convicted of anything. But they'll just throw things at you. That's what they did with Flynn. That's what they did with Trump. So they may be doing with Greg Phillips, and they're doing with Kathleen Engelbrecht. But this Missouri versus Biden case is very significant because the judge says, yeah, the executive branch guys are busy, but this is really important because it's First Amendment privileges. And so this is very, very significant. And I'm getting messages right now saying that tomorrow, this Cochise County hearing where Mark Elias will be going against Arizona Patriots for the hand count in Cochise County, and that's through Michael Schaefer at 2020isnullified.com. I don't think I've had him on, but I've talked about his movement that the machines were never certified and it was pre-pandemic. But this looks like they have a good chance of winning tomorrow. And I hope Team America Arizona will get involved in that. Mike Schaefer, I called him earlier, didn't get an answer. But to get back to this judge, the judge has said, yeah, executive branch folks like Fauci are really busy, but this is important enough and you can depose him. And now he is going to be deposed. This is the breakthrough we have been looking for. And it didn't come in the free state of Florida. It didn't come in the free state of Texas. And it's kind of a sleeper, Louisiana and Missouri. But you could put Oklahoma in that category too. But of course, we do have California, and that's another major victory because in the feral state of California and the feral city of Los Angeles, that's who's going after KONNECH, the Chinese spy. So that's very, very significant. So judge says top executive department officials should not be absent except extraordinary conditions for taking official positions. But in this case, it is worthwhile and it is very important. But then, as according to reference to Fauci, who has now killed, he lied about HIV way back in the day. I know biotech executives who know him that said he was lying back then. He's lying now. The plaintiffs allege that Fauci colluded to censor free speech about Charlie 19 origins, and that he was behind the funding gain of function, which is very clear that he was. I've even shown photos of Chinese biowarfare folks in American uniforms. This is very clear, and there is no doubt about this. But the plaintiffs also urged that Fauci engaged in written and oral communications with Mark Zuckerberg about the government Charlie 19 response and allegedly widespread social media censorship of the lag leak hypothesis ensued. And of course, that has been well worked, the whole chain of command, starting at Dietrich, ending up at Wuhan, lots of places in between, Harvard, Canada, the military games. all of that. But the important thing now is that the judge is saying, "Oh, you've proven it. Not that you have enough standing probable cause, but you have proven it, and you can depose him." And so this is coming right at the same time that we are in the middle of midterms, right at the same time where everything is happening worldwide from China. Like I said, the Foxconn riots from Iran, they're rioting in Iran, from Brazil, where they are protesting the cheat election of a convicted criminal, all of this. And this is very good news. And the reason why this is such good news is, like my intro said, is our patient Ebbs. And I'm not advocating anything illegal, immoral, unethical, or violent, although the left does blatantly and continually. But if the American people come to the conclusion that there is no justice in the courts, then they will respond with violence, which I'm not advocating. But as Billy Jack said, when the policemen break the law, there is no law. There's just a fight for survival. And then we're going to be fighting against, the veterans with children. Parents are going to be fighting against the blue-haired, pink-haired trannies, castrated, drugged-up trannies. And, it's pretty obvious who wins that. But even though they've killed off a lot, but they're killing off most of their own folks now. But the plaintiffs also allege that Pfizer, remember I've said many times now that the Pfizer cartel runs the U.S. government, came out in the Niebla Zambada trial, Fast and Furious, that the DEA had a deal with the Sinaloa cartel. Government of Mexico, GOM, used to have a deal with the La Familia cartel, but the government now has a deal with the Pfizer cartel. And plaintiffs allege that Pfizer got in on the action because Alex Berenson's speech was threatened Fauci directly. And so the judge says that the plaintiffs, again, have already proven that Fauci had a personal knowledge about the censorship, and that publicly available emails that Dr. Fauci was communicating and acting as an intermediary for the others in order to censor information from being shared across multiple social media outlets. So he hasn't said allege or potentially show. He said prove. This is a big deal. So Fauci was with the executive branch, the advisor, interacting with these social media platforms. This is a big conspiracy. I've worked some very, very big conspiracy cases. This could be the biggest conspiracy case because this, and the judge is already saying it's got standing, and they've proven it. And the judge tells Fauci that free speech is more important than inconveniencing science, because Fauci has now said, "I am science." And I've heard people say, "Well, do you believe in evolution?" And I've watched politicians kind of stutter, and I just said, they asked me, I'd say, "Well, I didn't know I had to believe in a scientific theory. I thought it was a hypothesis until proven, which it has never been." But when you say believe, now you're making it a faith system, which means it's your religion, which is really what Fauci is saying. And that's nothing new. It's not just Christian scientists. This is down through all the bureaucrats and theocrats that take control of every movement, whether it's the Brahmins in India, or the rabbis in Judaism, or the Catholic priests and bishops and Pope, any of them. They always let me take control of that. Very important to see. They've also gone after Rob Flaherty, director of digital strategy at the White House. This is very, very key too, because this is a 5th generation weapon here, the digital strategy, information influence operations, cyber warfare. And they allege that Flaherty worked with Meta, which is Facebook, which is LogLife, which is CIA, which is DARPA, which is BARDA, to curb shot hesitancy. And they say shot because it's not a vaccine, although I wouldn't take any of their vaccines at this point. And again, the court finds that plaintiffs have proven that Flaherty has personal knowledge about the issue concerning censorship across social media as it is related to COVID-19 and ancillary issues of Charlie 19. So this statement here this seals the win for the plaintiffs. It means they've already won because he's just said they've proven the link between the White House staff, between Fauci, between social media, between big tech, and this actually then goes to big pharma. So this is so important, is why I am emphasizing it this week. And the judge says the substantive reasons for taking Flaherty's depositions are set out herein. The court finds the substantive reasons are overwhelming. So this is really good news, because although Clay Martin's going to be disappointed because it's pushing back kinetic time, but kinetic war it's like flipping a light switch. You can't take the light out of the room. Once that starts, very hard to turn off. Watch the beginning of Saving Private Ryan when they finally make the beach and they come up the hill. There's a couple of Germans are trying to surrender, and they shoot them. And it's very hard right after hostilities are ceasing to surrender. That just doesn't stop. And that's why in the movie, Hanks, who's got the glove fetish thing going, in real life, doesn't say anything because it's just very, very difficult. I could go on about that for hours. I've taught a lot about that, but once that kinetic switch flips, it's very difficult to turn off. So Andrew Slavitt is served as the White House's senior COVID-19 advisor, and they quote that White House staff will be briefed by Twitter on vaccine misinformation, Twitter to cover trends seen generally around vaccine misinformation and tangible effects. So a director at the White House is asking a social media platform why they haven't banned a private citizen for things they're saying. So, of course, this is not that preposterous because they've locked up private citizens who were waved into the Capitol. But the important thing to understand here is that we have finally broken through. So all the Lindell stuff, all the different cases that they have been able to say not give venue to, because big tech, big pharma, nation state traders, and non-nation state enemies have bought them off. They have got them. Jen Psaki is going to be deposed as well, if you remember her. She was a lot more intelligent than the little black lady there, who now, like, it's not like they're walking across the border. She really literally knows nothing. And that's really important to understand too, because look at the Nick Sandmann win, look at the Kyle Rittenhouse win, look at the Waukesha Black Lives Matter guy who ran over folks with the car, convicted on all counts. So the battle is raging. It's becoming very clear. And the more we win, the more the hesitant will change sides. Now I'm seeing, FBI says synagogues is a credible threat. So FBI is now trying to shore up their Jewish support. So again, the court finds that the plaintiffs have proven that Psaki had personal knowledge about the issue concerning censorship. Then lastly, Elvis Chan. And Elvis Chan is a supervisory special agent, SAC, with the FBI. Now, they don't say proven. It doesn't say proven. He just says the plaintiffs have established that he has a personal knowledge of all this, because they want to depose Elvis Chan. And he's the SAC out of San Francisco. And of course, San Francisco is where the Ninth Circuit sits. It's the most liberal and the most overturned federal court. But anyway, in support of their argument to depose him, plaintiffs cite a podcast where Mark Zuckerberg stated that communications from the FBI led to Facebook censoring stories of Hunter Biden's laptop. So this is also very, very crucial because, and I've worked big cases. My first big seizure with 4,000 pounds of marijuana out of a truck. It came in on 30 horses. Then I had that was a truck seizure. Sorry, 2,000 pounds of cocaine on horseback. That was in US News and CNN back in, I think, 93. But that case spun off a lot of other cases, the cases that went west, cases that went east, cases that went north and south. And there were money laundering cases. And so that's what's going to happen with this. As this stuff gets into evidence, this is going to spin off other cases here. And so you see the big pharma will be in trouble here. Now, big pharma, they got a budget of millions every year because they push poison, they pimp poison, and they do this all the time. I know, I work in that sector, only for the good guys. FBI, this guy will lawyer up. He'll be like, Comio, I can't remember anything. I'm real busy. But this is a break, and this is important because it cuts back on the kinetic war. So this is really, really good news. Wanted to emphasize that today. I could go on. There's more plaintiffs that are going to be deposed on this, and this will spin off many other cases. And Team America and other groups should be ready to jump on these and get involved as well. So fear not, God bless, keep the faith, and hold fast. We are winning. It's very clear that we are winning, although this can take decades and centuries. But we are winning, and winning is always difficult, demanding, and always expensive. Tyrants always fall. Tyranny always fails. Graphene is not in our DNA, but freedom is. But freedom is never given. It is earned, fought for, won, and taken. So take it.